That boy one-time Keith Thurman, Mr. Don't Duck Me Son, is finally making his ring return after another 2-year layoff. But this one ain't gonna be easy for Keith. Yeah, we're gonna talk about his ring return. We're gonna talk about the opponent he's gonna return against. And we're going to break that all down for you in this video. But before we do that, make sure you hit my like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subbed to the channel. Keith one-time Thurman, man. One thing I can say about Keith Thurman is he's had a very, very weird career. Keith Thurman was on top of the boxing world. Remember when PBC started? Keith Thurman was that dude. Keith Thurman was the fighter that Sean Porter, Errol Spence, all of them fighters, they was looking at Keith Thurman as the top dog in the welterweight division over there on the PBC side of the street, besides Floyd Mayweather, of course, and they wanted Keith Thurman's spot. But Keith Thurman's career didn't turn out like everybody thought it was going to turn out because he had injury after injury, layoff after layoff. I mean, Keith Thurman was the Greg Odom of boxing. Now, a lot of y'all don't even know who Greg Odom is, but look him up and then you'll understand what I'm talking about. I mean, he couldn't stay away from the injuries. He couldn't stay in the game. He couldn't stay in the ring. And recently, we've been hearing a lot about Keith Thurman, but it ain't the news that we've been wanting to hear. Because if it ain't Keith Thurman and Clarissa Shields talking about fighting each other, then it's Keith Thurman ducking out of fights like Jerron Boots Ennis and then denying that he ever ducked out of a fight with Jerron Boots Ennis. And then before that saying that he didn't even know who Jerron Ennis was. Or it's an announcement coming out that Keith is going to fight Onis. And then all of a sudden, we see Mario Barrios in the ring with Onis. So Keith Thurman hasn't been in the ring since February of 2022. You know we're in 24 now, right? So it's been basically 2 years since he's been in the ring. Before he fought Mario Barrios in February of 2022, he hadn't been in the ring in 3 years. And that was against Manny Pacquiao. And everybody knows what happened in that Manny Pacquiao fight. So Keith Thurman, he been trying to get back to the top of the game ever since he lost to Manny Pacquiao. But it's been hard for him to do it because he been laid off. And if you talk to Keith Thurman, he says that they was pretty much trying to blackball him in so many words, right? He says it's not his fault that he's had this long layoff ever since the last fight that he had Mario Barrios. He says they gave him the Mario Barrios fight, but he pulled strings trying to get that fight, right? And after that, he ain't got no more fights. But Keith Thurman claims that they asked him to fight during the pandemic, and he refused to fight during the pandemic because he wanted to fight with a crowd. And he says he believes that the PBC has been holding that against him. Thus far, we've been seeing him have another 2-year layoff. He had one fight, Mario Barrios, and he did well in that Mario Barrios fight. I mean, to me, he dominated that fight, and it was Keith Thurman is back. We thought Keith Thurman and Errol Spence was going to fight at one point in time at 154. We thought that Keith Thurman and Onis was going to fight just recently, like I told y'all, but that fight fell out, and Keith Thurman, he never spoke on it, really. He just said he don't know. But when we hear people talk about it that's behind the scenes, they said that Keith Thurman was basically pricing himself out. Fighters like Keith Thurman, they were used to making a whole lot of money when PBC first started, and now they want to make that same type of money, but that same type of money ain't on the table. You got to earn. You got to earn what you get. And they said that Keith Thurman continues to price himself out of fights. But now, Keith Thurman is set to return to the ring, and this might be for a vacant WBC or a vacant WBA strap. I'm not fully sure of all the information yet, but he's set to return to the ring against Stanionis, and they on the even playing field because Stanionis is coming off a very long layoff himself. Stanionis and Keith Thurman, they last fought 3 months apart. If y'all remember, Stanionis haven't fought since he was on the undercard of Errol Spence versus Onis. In Stanionis, he had multiple fights fall out, but those fights that he had fall out was all one opponent, Virgil Ortiz. And it's crazy because Virgil Ortiz is getting a fight before Stanionis. And Virgil Ortiz is the reason that Stanionis been on the sideline all of these years, waiting for Virgil Ortiz. But Virgil Ortiz, he keep having medical issues, and he kept pulling out of the Stanionis fight the week of the fight. So Stanionis been in several training camps, but he ain't got to show his skills in the ring. So Stanionis and Keith Thurman, they both been on long layoffs, but they both going to get in the ring and showdown with each other sometime the first quarter of this year. So I believe this might take place March or April time. So I think they're on the even playing field. At least Keith, he ain't got to get in the ring with somebody that's been active and been fresh. And Stanionis, he don't got to get in the ring with somebody that's been active and been fresh. But one thing about Stanionis, he's much younger than Keith Thurman, and Stanionis is a pressure relentless fighter. And we know Keith Thurman's vulnerabilities is to the body, and Stanionis, he goes to the body very well. So this is going to be a very tough fight for Keith Thurman. You know, Keith Thurman, he going to have to be in some great shape. He's going to have to use his legs. He's going to have to be able to box on the outside, use his jab. We know that Keith Thurman, he does have power. Stanionis got power also. So, man, this is going to be a hell of a fight. I'm looking forward to seeing this fight. And this is a fight I really can't pick a winner. You know, if Keith was in prime condition like he was in 2016 and 2017, yes, I would pick Keith Thurman to beat Stanionis. But with another 2-year layoff, after having a 3-year layoff before his last fight, and then an almost 3-year layoff before that fight, we don't know how Keith Thurman is going to look at all. We don't even know what type of fighter Keith Thurman is at this point. You know what I'm saying? One thing that you can't beat is age. You can't beat age. When age catch up to you, that's just it. You know, and I'm not saying that Keith needs to hang it up because he's too old, because like I said, he performed well in his last fight, but that was 2 years ago. And in those 2 years, has age caught up to Keith Thurman? We've seen it happen to Manny Pacquiao. We've seen it happen to fighters time after time again. And the biggest career killer in boxing is inactivity. Yeah, inactivity. You cannot substitute working out in the gym and sparring with inactivity. You can't do it. It ain't nothing like real ring action with 8-ounce gloves on, you know? And so, man, I don't know. I don't know what's going to go down with Keith Thurman. You know, if he loses this fight, people are going to be calling for Keith to hang out the gloves. We already know it's very, very hard for him to get fights. We don't know the reason. The reason could be that he's pricing himself out, or the reason could be that, you know, PBC, they got a vendetta against him because when they called him to the plate, he refused to accept it, right? When they needed him during COVID, when they needed to put on boxing shows, Keith Thurman said, nah, I ain't doing it. So that could be the reason. I don't know. But one thing I know is Stanionis is a hell of a fighter, and Keith Thurman got a very tough task on his hands. Let's see what happens. Y'all let me know how y'all feel about this fight. Who y'all think is going to win this fight? Drop a comment in the comment section. Make sure that y'all hit my like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subbed. There you go, talking that boxing again. And I'm gone.
Choking on that lethal. 2 miles per hour, so everybody